الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. اللهم لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله علانيته وسره، إنك على كل شيء قدير. لك العتبى يا ربنا حتى ترضى، ولا حول ولا قوة لنا إلا بك. نحمدك ونشكرك ونستعين بك ونستهديك ونستغفرك ونثني عليك يا ربنا الخير كله ولا نكفرك، ونخلع ونترك من يفجرك. نرجو رحمتك ونخشى عذابك، إن عذابك الجد بالكفار ملحق. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة، وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه ومن اهتدى بهديه وعمل بعمله إلى يوم الدين، وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك أرحم الراحمين، اللهم آمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of heavens and earth, the cherisher, the provider, the sustainer, the giver of bounties. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every blessing He has bestowed upon me and my family and loved ones. And I express my gratitude to the Lord in words and action. I say Alhamdulillah, 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 for all the blessings that I'm aware of and the blessings that I'm not. I bear witness that there's no deity worthy of worship save Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger and the bearer of glad tidings and the role model to be followed, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and his family and companions and loved ones, and all students, men and women that follow in his footsteps until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah to make each and every one of us among them. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Recently I was asked by a family to visit them at their home because the father was very, very sick, just recovered from open heart surgery. And I went there, mashallah, the brother and his wife, they're elderly. They are in their 60s, both of them. And I prayed with them and I stayed with them a while. And all of their kids, except the youngest one, all of them have graduated college and they all married. And then when the sister was walking me to my car, she mentioned something to me that really disturbed me. She said that she's asking me to make dua for her daughter. And her daughter basically is in high school, about to graduate high school. She's senior, so this coming fall she will be senior. And she told me that her daughter decided that she does not want to go by her Muslim name at school anymore. And she took off her hijab. And she does not want to have any Muslim friends. And she does not want to have to come to the masjid or deal with the Muslim community whatsoever. I mean, that family is not connected with us here. It's a very, very remote part of our city. And I asked her about why. What drove your daughter to make this very tough and disheartening decision? And she said that my daughter told me, while in my heart I still believe in Allah, I just want to prepare myself for the new America. I'm preparing myself for a new society that hates Muslims, that wants to bash Muslims, that want to banish Muslims, and I'm just getting ready for that new reality. So I gave her some words of comfort, and while I was driving my car the whole time, I'm thinking about this. And it's not just because I have a daughter as well, it's because we as a Muslim community are responsible for this generation. And it's not just about my kids or your kids, but all our kids. Because we are the village that is supposed to be raising the children of our community, right? Every single one of us is a parent to every single child in this community. And I said this so many times. If you see my kids doing something wrong, you go ahead and correct it. You don't have to talk to me about it. And as it is always my habit, I resort to the Quran whenever I'm unstuck spiritually or intellectually with a challenge that I'm not able to resolve. I always take the Quran and I flip through the pages and I stop randomly at one page and I start reading from the beginning. And the one ayah that touches my heart, I realize that this is Allah's message to me directly. I did not do that this time. Yesterday night, I just started playing from the Quran, through my phone. And you have this feature on your phone, on your media player, where it shuffles the songs or the audio, right? So it starts randomly from any part of the Quran. And I said, you know what, let me try this and see what happens. And then it's playing, and subhanAllah, it's Thursday night, and it's playing, and the very first ayah that starts, the Shaykh starts with the Shaykh al-Juhani, starts reciting, was the ayat from Surat al-Kahf. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. This is the very last section of Surah Al-Kahf, which describes the scene of the Day of Judgment. Describes oceans upon oceans of human beings. Different colors, different races, different ethnicities, men and women, different age groups. All of them in this tumultuous ocean of billions and billions of human beings standing next to each other in very tight space. And they surge. When you look at the ocean and you have the waves surging right and left and going against each other, they surge like waves dashing against each other. That's what the ayah says. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Allah says that I will leave them there. I will leave them to dash against each other like waves on the Day of Judgment. Because that in and of itself is a punishment. Right? Witnessing the Day of Judgment and being in that place and standing amongst those people and being in such proximity and such close contact with other human beings is in and of itself torment. Before we talk about judgment or balance or scales or hell or heaven, we're not talking about that yet. We're just talking about us standing very close to each other, almost touching each other, having to suffer the presence and the sweat and the smell and the agony and the anxiety of each other on the Day of Judgment. Right? I don't know why my heart trembled when I listened to the ayat. My heart trembled. And I said what the Prophet used to say, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rabbi, sallim. Whenever he heard the ayah of punishment, of torment in the Quran, he would say, Ya Rabbi, sallim. Lord, give me safety. Protect me. Preserve me. And I want you to imagine the scene, brothers and sisters, billions of people. If you make one tiny little move, through the dominoes effect, this move is translated and maximized and exaggerated into waves. It's like Hajj. They tell you if you lose your slippers, if you drop your wallet in Hajj, the last thing you want to do is what? Is bend over and pick it up. Why? Because the tremendous force of millions of people pushing each other makes it impossible for you to pick yourself up and stand up again if you trample, if you fall. And people, even though they see you and they will step on you, but they can't stop because, again, there's a tremendous pressure behind them and you can't stop it. So the scene on the Day of Judgment is very similar to this. You have billions of people. Everyone makes a tiny little nudge to the person next to them. It's translated into tremendous force that creates waves like this. And they can't say anything out loud either. See, that's the thing. And that's the other thought that trembles my heart. On the Day of Judgment, people cannot speak loudly. Why? Because they have not been given permission to do so. Allah says in the Quran, وَخَشَعَتِ الْأَصْوَاتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ فَلَا تَسْمَعُ إِلَّا هَمْسًا. On that day, all the voices will be muted from the awe of the Lord. And all you can hear is whispers, whispers of fear, whispers of fright, whispers of uncertainty and anxiety. People can only whisper on that day. But see, that's the thing. You put all the whispers together, all the whispers of billions of people, you put them all together, it creates this very loud, noisy cacophony that can still deafen the ears. It's not the whisper of 1 or 10 or 50 men, it's the whispers of billions. That is the scene. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you and I from that day and its consequences. Allahumma ameen. But you know what occurred to me when I listened to the ayat of Surah Al-Kahf? I remembered that the Prophet ﷺ wanted us to recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday, or at least Thursday night. I mean, the time from Thursday night until Asr of Friday, according to the Ahlul Ilm, the scholars. Rasulullah ﷺ wanted you and I to recite Surah Al-Kahf on a consistent basis. Not only that, he says, من قرأ سورة الكهف من يوم الجمعة أضاء الله له نورا من بين قدميه إلى عنان السماء. If you recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create that beam of light from between your feet to the corners of heaven. This light, this connection between you and the divine realm. It's a beautiful thing. It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday, there will be an open channel between you and I through which we can talk and converse and communicate. So when you recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday, you open up a channel with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you can hear the words of the wisdom of the Lord flowing into your heart every Friday. It opens up your sensors. It cleanses the sensors. You know, in your car, sometimes your battery is not bad or anything, but the connections are bad. You know, they're all greased up and dirty. So you need to clean them up, the positive and the negative, and then you put them on the pole, right? Sometimes the sensors are good, but they are dirty, and there's a lot of noise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, recite Surah Al-Fajr, Surah Al-Kahf every Friday, so that the sensors are cleaned up, so that the channel is open, and then you'll be able to hear what I want to say to you. But the Prophet ﷺ also taught us about Surah Al-Kahf something else that is very, very important. من حفظ 10 من سورة الكهف حفظ من فتنة النسيخ الدجال. If you memorize 10 verses, 10, it doesn't say the beginning or the end or the middle, it doesn't say the entire surah. It says if you memorize 10 verses from Surah Al-Kahf, you are protected from the fitna, from the trial of who? The one and only, the Antichrist, the Nasiq al-Dajjal. Again, mind you, I'm supposed to prepare the khutbah, and these are the things I'm thinking about yesterday night. And I realized that this could actually be a very good message to share with you today. The Prophet ﷺ says 10 verses from Surah Al-Kahf. You memorize them. Now, some of the scholars say the first 10, some of the scholars say the last 10, some scholars say any 10. But if you memorize 10 verses from Surah Al-Kahf, you are protected from the fitna, from the trial of the Antichrist and the Nasiq al-Dajjal. Okay, let me talk to you about this a little bit more. Okay, so the Antichrist is that entity that will come towards the end of time. It'll corrupt people, it'll destroy lives, it'll be the most tremendous trial that you and I have ever experienced. But what about the rest of us who will die before the end of time? Show of hands, how many of you would like to experience the Antichrist? 0. Nobody wants to. Everyone wants to leave the world before such difficult times come upon us. I don't even want to have to deal with the Antichrist, subhanAllah. So the rest of us who will not experience the Antichrist, what is the value of Surah Al-Kahf for us? If Surah Al-Kahf protects people from the fitna of the Antichrist, what about those who will not experience the Antichrist? Surah Al-Kahf is irrelevant for the rest of us. The scholars say, and this is Sahib al-Manara, Muhammad Rashid Rida alayhi rahmatullah, the great author from the early years of the 20th century, who authored this great and remarkable tafsir of the Quran, Tafsir al-Manara, which was basically a compilation of Sheikh Muhammad Abdu's teachings and lessons that his ardent students were writing down every night. Every Tuesday night, he used to do his tafsir class. Right? And they wrote everything down, and they compiled Tafsir al-Manara, and Rashid Rida, the great scholar, he sort of like compiled it and put it together and he made it into a book, basically. Sheikh Rashid Rida says that if you are just like the rest of us and ordinary human beings who will live and die without having to experience the Antichrist, Surah Al-Kahf serves a purpose for you, and that is to protect you from fitna in general. If the Antichrist is the epitome of the craziest and the most insane form of trial, then in general it protects you from fitna. And again, I'm thinking, this is all a thought process in my head. I'm thinking about these things. Because in the back of my mind, I have that sister in the back of my mind that I told you about earlier. That young sister who decided to change her name, at least as far as her friends are concerned. She does not want to go by her Muslim name anymore. She took off her hijab. And she cut loose all her Muslim friends, and now she just has those non-Muslim friends around her. She wants to lead a different lifestyle because she's preparing herself, quote unquote, for the new America. If a certain candidate gets elected or something, God forbid. She's preparing herself to a new America that will not be very kind to her. And that was a fitna in her deen. She stopped praying, she stopped fasting, she stopped practicing the deen because she wants to become a different human being. And that was a trial that basically sliced through the very core of her faith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and I and our children. I am reading Surah Al-Kahf and listening to the Shaykh reciting and thinking about the trials of the Antichrist and thinking about memorizing 10 ayat from Surah as protection from trials in general with that sister in my mind. Because I need to call her mother and share some guidance. Because I need to talk to other youth and share some guidance in these difficult times in which we live. Right? Very difficult times. I mean, every day we're watching videos about police brutality. Every single day we're witnessing crimes right and left on the rise. Every single day Daesh attacks claiming the lives of innocent human beings. And you and I are being blamed for it. Every single day economic uncertainty and anxiety and people losing their jobs. And property values depreciating and people don't know what to do. These are trying times, as we say, brothers and sisters. But here's the thing. You look at Surah Al-Kahf, and that's our guidance for today, inshallah. After Jum'ah, some of you will go back to work, some of you will go home. But I advise you to make 10 minutes today, inshallah, out of your time, to recite Surah Al-Kahf. And recite it with a different light, with a different perspective, right? I realize that Surah Al-Kahf has 4 stories. And there are 4 stories about trials. What is the first story? Ashab al-Kahf, obviously. The youth of the cave. What is the second story? Sahib al-Jannatayn, the man that used to own the 2 gardens. Remember? The third story, Musa wal-Khadr, the righteous man that was with Musa on his trip, on his journey. And the last one is a story about a very powerful man by the name of Dhul Qarnayn. Everyone knows that. The 4 stories address 4 different types of trials. Again, Surah Al-Kahf protects you from fitna in general. Let's look at the fitna, the types of fitna that are mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf. The first story, which is about Ashab al-Kahf, the righteous young people that resorted to the cave, it was a trial about what? Their deen. Fitna to deen. Trial about their own faith. Right? Much like our sister that I talked about earlier. Sahib al-Jannatayn, the owner of the 2 gardens, it was a fitna about what? About money and wealth. He was blinded by his wealth and he walks so arrogantly into his 2 gardens and he thinks, oh, nothing can destroy my 2 gardens. They're so beautiful and I will not donate anything, I will not share anything. And then the other person, his friend, he keeps giving him advice. Don't say that, don't get arrogant. But he acted like Qarun, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I have been given this wealth by virtue of my own knowledge, on my own hard work. Don't tell me God. Nothing. No one is going to take this away from me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leveled both gardens. He will completely destroy it. Right? The story of Musa and Al-Abd al-Salih, the righteous worshipper, was a story about which kind of fitna? Now I will let you answer the question, but let me tell you the story quickly. A man comes to Musa alayhi salam and he says, Ya Musa, man a'lamu ahli al-ard? Who is the most knowledgeable person on this earth? So Musa says, well, I don't know anyone that has more knowledge knowledge than me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show him that if you have ilm, there's always someone out there who has more ilm than you. If you have power, there's always someone out there that is more powerful. If you have money, there's always someone out there that has more money. If you have wisdom, there's always someone out there that is wiser than you. So the fitna that is addressed in this story is fitnatul ilm. You have knowledge and you think that you're better than others, you think that you're more knowledgeable than others, and you start looking down upon others. And the story tells you that you need to understand there's always someone out there that has more knowledge than you. Number 4 and last but not least in the story is that of Dhul Qarnayn. And Dhul Qarnayn is the trial of what? Sulta, power, authority. Now we are taught by Ahlul Ilm, right? آخر ما ينزع من قلوب الصالحين حب الرياسة. آخر ما ينزع من قلوب الصالحين حب الرياسة. The last ailment, the last disease, the last trouble that is removed from the hearts of the righteous is that of the lust for power. So, you're a fresh person who wants to come to the deen, and you have all these illnesses in your heart and all these problems and all these bad things that you do. And every day you're shedding off those bad qualities, one after the other. So the lust for money is shed. Arrogance, anger, envy, malice, the lust for women, all these things, one after the other, you're losing them. The last thing that remains that is the hardest to remove is what? Is the love of power, subhanAllah. You take a good look at the world right now, you realize how true this stuff is. Okay. 4 stories with 4 trials. Now you look at the surah and how it addressed the 4 trials, right? It was mentioned right there. Again, Surah Kahf is a surah that teaches you and I about how to preserve and protect our hearts from the fitna of this dunya. Okay? Number 1, what was the one thing that helped the youth of the cave and protected them from losing their faith? It was what? It was the cave? They could have hidden in a house. Was it money? It was each other. It was each other. As-suhbatu as-salihah, good company. One person by himself or herself may not be able to make it, but you put them together as a group, inshallah ta'ala, they make it together. And also I talked about that in the context of the surah, right? وَاصْبِرْ نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي. Strive to persistently and consistently keep yourself in the company of those who mention the name of the Lord night and day. I know some of you say, well, religious people are boring. Religious people are not fun. They always remind us of serious things. I would like to spend more time with my friends because they're fun. They amuse me. They entertain me. We talk about fun things. Sure. But I tell you, brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, the boring of religious people that will save you on the Day of Judgment is much better for you than the entertaining of your other friends that will not save you on the Day of Judgment. As I talked to you about in Ramadan, if you have to choose between 2 companions, the company of those who make you scared in the life of this world so that you reach safety on the Day of Judgment is better for you than the company of those who make you feel safe, but they will fail to save you on the Day of Judgment. لأن تصحب من يخوفونك حتى تبلغ المأمن خير لك من أن تصحب من يؤمنونك حتى تبلغ المخاوف. Right? Which one is better? To be a little bit scared in this world, a little bit bored among religious people, and have to force myself to be with them, but then be saved on the Day of Judgment, or the other way around? Think about it. The answer is very clear. You would like to protect yourself from the fitna of the deen, you do the exact opposite of what that sister is doing. You surround yourself with Muslims, with righteous people. You force yourself to sometimes accept their judgmental attitude, sometimes accept their harsh reminders, sometimes accept that they have to be serious. Sometimes. It's all for the health of your heart and the health of your soul, and certainly the safety of your Day of Judgment. Number 2, the second story teaches us how to manage the trial of wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws a beautiful parable. That of the life of the world. مثل الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح. Remind yourself, in order to realize the fitna of this dunya, the fitna of wealth, you remind yourself of the nature of dunya. It's like rain that came down from the skies and it was absorbed by the plants. The plants blossomed and became beautiful and green and lush. But what happens to every plant in the end, brothers and sisters? It dies and it becomes yellow and it becomes, like these straws that are carried by the wind and blown all over the place. That is the nature of our dunya. Number 3, the third story, Musa al-Khadr, the righteous man, the righteous worshipper. What was the gist of this whole thing? How can we overcome the fitna of ilm? Through humility. By humbling yourself. Always remind yourself that someone out there is more knowledgeable than you, possesses more wisdom than you, has better judgment than you, and always be open to be corrected, be open to be criticized, be open to be put down by other people's feedback. It's okay, it's all for the betterment of your soul. It'll sting initially. When people criticize you, it stings. Of course, every single one of us has a bit of an ego that we need to protect. But every time people take jabs at your ego and strike at your ego and slice through your ego, at the end of the day, you are the beneficiary. It helps you. You humble yourself and remind yourself constantly that other people out there in the world have better knowledge than you. 4th is the story of Dhul Qarnayn. And what do we learn from that story, brothers and sisters? Often in our Muslim community, there is that false humility, I call it, where people run away from responsibility. They say, I don't want to nominate myself for leadership positions. They say, let someone else do it. They say, it'll corrupt my heart. I don't want to lead. I just want to work in the backgrounds, in the shades, behind the curtains. I don't want to be the person in the spotlight. Well, who's going to be in the spotlight then? If everyone runs away from responsibility and runs away from the microphone and runs away from prominence, then who's going to lead? Who's going to carry our community forward? If everyone wants to work in the background, in the darkness, because they want to protect their niyyah, then who's going to take leadership positions? What did Yusuf alayhi salam request of the king of Egypt? He said what? اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليه. A prophet who went to the king of Egypt, he said, install me, appoint me as your minister of finance so that I can control all of the resources of our country, because I know I'm a knowledgeable person, I'm a trustworthy person, and I'm capable. I can take care of this job. So instead of running away from leadership positions, what are we supposed to do? If you're offered the leadership position and you think that you're capable, accept it and use it to do something good. Dhul Qarnayn could have just run away and said, you know what, it'll mess up my intentions. I don't want to be this great leader that mobilizes armies and amasses resources in order to help and serve around the corners of the earth. But he didn't. He accepted the job and he used it to do something good. And that is my advice to you, brothers and sisters. And again, don't get me wrong, I see how some people, the minute they acquire a leadership position, wallahi, brothers and sisters, small people with small minds, literally, small people with small minds, with small intentions, with small ambitions, you put them in one tiny little leadership position, they think they control the world. They think they control the world, and they would like to subdue everyone around them and everyone under them, subhanAllah. And there are those who can change the world with a flick of a finger, but you see humility in them that inspires you. Yes, we have this interesting contrast in our community. But I say, be like Dhul Qarnayn. Accept the leadership position. Go after it, even sometimes, if you think that you can use your power and your resources and your knowledge to effect good change in the community. And this is how you overcome the lust for power. Overcoming the lust for power is not by running away from it. By engaging it, but using it to serve, and using it to help, and using it to make a difference in your community. And the minute it's taken away from you, you say, Alhamdulillah, and you move on to something else. But you keep clinging, and you keep fighting, and you keep competing, and you keep hurting people. just because you want to control that little portion of dunya, it's not going to help you. These are the 4 trials that are mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, brother and sister. And I decided that I need to pick up the phone. I haven't done it yet, but I need to pick up the phone and talk to that sister and tell her find guidance in Surah Al-Kahf. And talk to your daughter, because inshallah ta'ala, she might be able to overcome fitnatul deen, the trial of faith that she went through, if she absorbs some more of Surah Al-Kahf. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us our sins and to establish us with firmness on His path. I ask Allah to accept our good deeds and to make us among those who are humble and those who are compassionate. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands, speak to Allah from the heart. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى أصحابه الغر الميامين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, today I just shared with you some insights, some thoughts from Surah Al-Kahf, inspired by a conversation I had recently with a sister whose daughter is technically on the verge of renouncing Islam because she feels like being Muslim, being a manifest Muslim in this modern society is something that will hurt her. So she decided to change her name, to take off her hijab, to stop practicing Islam because she wants to protect herself. And I randomly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me to listen to a recitation from Surah Al-Kahf yesterday that sort of shed some light into these trials that we as men and women of faith experience. And I said that Surah Al-Kahf tells us a lot about the trials of this dunya and how to be protected from those trials. Through the 4 surahs of Surah Al-Kahf, the 4 stories of Surah Al-Kahf, the first story of the youth of the cave talks about fitnatul deen, the trial of faith. The second story, Sahib al-Jannatain, the owner of the 2 gardens, addresses fitnatul mal, or the trial of wealth. The third one, the encounter between Musa alayhi salam and the righteous worshipper, Al-Khadr, addresses fitnatul ilm, the trial of knowledge. And the last one, with Dhul Qarnayn, addresses fitnatul sulta, the trial of authority or power. And I wanted to share with you, inshallah, in conclusion of this khutbah, one last trial from Surah Al-Kahf that I think is just as dangerous or even more than all the ones we've discussed. But this one is not mentioned in a story. This one is mentioned in an ayah towards the end of the surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. He instructs the Prophet to declare and pronounce amongst the believers. Do you want me to clarify to you one who has the most unbeneficial of deeds, the most losing of deeds, the most losing of investments, of bets? If the Prophet ﷺ asked you that question, what would you say? You would say, absolutely, by all means, Messenger of Allah, tell me, what are the deeds that lead to nowhere? I don't want to be wasting my life doing things when it's a wasted investment. Tell me, who is that person whose deeds amount to absolutely nothing, no matter how big or long they are? الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. All their efforts in the life of this world have gone astray. Why? Because they have done so many things thinking that those things are beneficial and good. Isn't that the scariest thing? Do you ever think about that? Like you're doing things thinking they're right, and then on the day of judgment they count against you. You invest all of your savings, all of your money, you sell everything you have in order to invest it in a business, and you spend like 7 to 10 years working on that business, building it up, refining it, marketing it. You spent everything and you put your family in jeopardy and you have nothing left. And then all of a sudden this business crumbles in a second. How would you feel about that? How many stories have you heard of people who've done this? And they end up like in mental institutes, or they end up committing suicide. Because they've put all their cards on the table, they've put all their bets on one thing, and then it fails. You think of the state of the world, brothers and sisters. People in Daesh, for example, those guys are deluded. And they have leaders who tell them, if you strap yourself with dynamite and go into a marketplace and kill children, you go to Jannah. And they do it, thinking that they're going to Jannah after doing this. One of the brothers, by the way, who visited us about a few years ago, was a retired army from the Pakistan Army. A retired general from the Pakistani Army, who visited Sacramento a few years ago. And he told me that when they used to raid some of the compounds of the Taliban in Pakistan, there would be murals all over the place on the walls of naked women. Forgive me for saying this. Murals. And they tell them that these are the women that you will get if you die for the sake of Allah and go to Jannah. See the power of this cancer? And how they use this to control the minds of young people? And those young people, they grow up around this, thinking that this is the right thing to do. Taking innocent lives is my ticket to Jannah. And then you go to Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes you in the worst parts of hell. All their efforts in the life of this world were directed in the wrong direction. And they think they're doing something good. Look at the modern state of the world. You see fathers who spent 25, 30 years building up a business. They compromise their families. They compromise the community. They compromise the deen. They compromise their values and principles. They do what it takes to make as much money as possible. That's all it is. That's all you think about. How can I make more money every single day? Thinking that that is the definition of manhood, that's the definition of success, that's the definition of good. Is how much money I make. And then one day you wake up, your family is gone, your kids have gone astray, nobody likes you, everyone hates you, and you lose all of your money, and you end up with nothing. A journey that was worth nothing, and you're now old, and you can't fix it. You can't roll back the clock and fix things because it's all over. How would you feel about that? I think of, things like, just to be a little bit relevant, a little bit socially relevant, think of police officers in this country. Think of police officers in other countries who think that they go to police academies in order to protect and serve and uphold the law, right? And be on the side of people who need our help, right? But in certain circles of our country, and we see this happening every single day, they are being used. They're being used as instruments of oppression. They're being used as instruments of upholding racism. And as I told you last week, in the UK, over 25 years, only 55 police-related deaths or police killings. In America, just 2016, we are close to 700. We're close to 700 just this year. In their hearts, they think they're doing the right thing. And all of these things, all of these concepts must be revisited. You cannot take anything for granted. You need to understand, am I being used to hurt or not? Am I being used to oppress or not? Am I an instrument of the law or an instrument of powerful people who would like to maintain their privileges? Of course there are police officers who are good, who have beautiful hearted, and they would like to serve, but we're talking about the system here, brothers and sisters. Again, I'm giving you examples about the ayah so that we're able to understand how this applies to us. How this applies to us. People who spend their entire lives following a corrupt ideology. And they follow that ideology in everything they do and everything they say. And then it turns out to be an ideology that is being co-opted by political leaders and rulers in order to oppress the masses. Imams and shuyukh who stand on mimbars, pulpits like this, and they spew hate and they spew filth in order to control the masses for the benefit of people in power. Do we experience this or not? It happens in our ummah and our community every single day. These are just small examples of how you can lead a life thinking you're doing a good thing, but essentially you're just hurting yourself and hurting your akhirah, because it is not necessarily a good thing. The point here, brothers and sisters, is that you need to investigate what you're doing. You need to investigate your belief system. You need to investigate your thought process, your convictions, the things that you hold dear. Be critical about everything that is being presented to you. By the way, including the very words that are coming out of my mouth right now. Don't take it for granted. I'm telling you, don't take even my words for granted. It is your responsibility, every single one of you, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The decisions you make are your responsibility. You can't say the Imam said this. You are the one that is responsible. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ used to say, Allahumma ja'alna mimma yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsana. I always make this dua every single Friday. Ya Allah, make us among those who have the open mind to hear anything, to listen to anything that is being said, but they choose the things that are only righteous. You need to have the open mind. Give people a chance to say their things, but you have to decide on what is righteous and what is not righteous. And that is the greatest trial, brothers and sisters, is to keep doing something for the rest of your life, thinking it's a good thing, and then you realize one day that it was all against you. That it was all to your disadvantage. I'd rather make you uncertain so that you work hard and think harder than make you comfortable and safe and secure so that you're not exerting the mental and the spiritual effort to figure it out. Forgive me if I'm making things a little bit more difficult. I'd rather that we feel unsafe in the life of this world so that inshallah we feel safe on the day of judgment. Allah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to accept our good deeds, to accept our weaknesses and our humility. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us with gentleness to His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mend our hearts. I ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to cleanse our hearts from evil, from malice, from hatred. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to replace that with humility, with empathy and compassion. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to beautify our intentions and to correct our intentions behind all the deeds that we commit and all the things that we do. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us invest our times and our lives and our efforts into things that are valuable to us in this life and the next. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect the children of our community. I ask Allah to protect the sons and daughters of our families. I ask Allah to protect them from their environment, to protect them from the inclinations of their own souls. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us stand as a community that serves each other and helps each other. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this beautiful day to be there for those who need His help, to allay the fears of those who are fearful, to alleviate the pains of those who are in pain. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring solace to the hearts of those who experience fear and fright. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring comfort to the hearts of those who are struggling. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to bring healing to the bodies and minds and souls of those who are in pain. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring rahmah and compassion to those who have passed. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal as He gathered us here as brothers and sisters in this shape and form to gather all of us in His Jannah on the day of judgment. Allahumma ameen.